We're gonna break the record.
All right, students, so I'm being kind of tricky today. How much do I have here? And for one of the very first times I've asked you that, where this piece here is a different size than this piece here. I've got a hole that's cut into 10 pieces, so this here is 1/10. But then this 10th here is also cut into 10 pieces. So how much do I have here? Well, in order to do this, I need to figure out how many of these little pieces would fit in the entire whole. And I could do that by drawing all these little lines, but instead, let's just count them a different way. So there's 10 of them here, which means there'd be 10 of them in this 10th. So there's 10 of them here. We'd have 20 here, 10, 20, 30 of them if it were shaded all the way up to here, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, and 100. These pieces here are hundredths. Hundredths, because it takes 100 of them to make one whole. We've stumbled onto, because we're doing our times 10 here, another times 10 piece. Another 10 piece. So we know our tens and our ones, and then our decimal place. And we've talked for a couple of days about tenths, and they're named that because it takes 10 of them to make 100. I'm sorry, 10 of them to make one whole. Now we've moved into this next piece, the hundredths. And this hundredth, it takes 10 of them. It takes 10 of them to make 1/10. And just like it takes 100 ones to make 100, it's going to take 100 hundredths to make one whole. And that's why they're called hundredths. Right? So we can count these now that we know what the pieces are. How many hundredths are there in a tenth? Well, we've answered that with our place value chart here, right? There are 10 of them. In fact, we already kind of knew that because this tenth is cut up into 10 of them. So how many hundredths are in a tenth? There are 10 of them here. I have 10 hundredths here. 10 hundredths there. 1/10 is the same as 10 hundredths. 10 hundredths because of our times 10 and divided by 10 rule, because of our base 10 rule with our place value chart. So then if I have 10 of them in this whole tenth, now I can count those hundredths, because we can't make fractions unless we're counting pieces that are all the same size. So I know here I've got 10. Here, if I look really closely, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Here I have 10 hundredths plus 4 hundredths. So how many do I have in all? I've got 14 hundredths. Well, how do I write that? Now that I know that, I can write that as a fraction pretty easily, because this hundredths, just like tenths, is telling me my denominator, 14 hundredths, right there. But how do I write that as a decimal? Well, I know that I have 0 wholes, so I'm going to start with my 0 here. And then how many tenths did I have? Did I make a whole tenth? Yeah, I've got 1 whole tenth here. 1 whole tenth. So I'm going to write my 1 here, 1/10, and then how many hundredths after that? Well, I've got 4. 1/10 and 4 hundredths. Or, when I write it this way, 14 hundredths. I have 14 hundredths shaded in here. Be a little bit careful with this. A common mistake I see with students is moving these numbers around and not being careful about what these pieces mean. If I have 14 hundredths, I can trade up and I can have 1/10 and 4 hundredths. That 10 here was enough to make a tenth. 14 hundredths, and we always read it by the last decimal name in the number. So we have 1/10, 4 hundredths, 14 hundredths. Give these a try. They're not as tricky as they look. You definitely got this. Good luck.